My long-range transmitter has been knocked out. Retransmit this message to Coruscant.
Okay, hi there, friends. So, it's that time. Today's Friday, so I guess it's time to make another video. And last week's video, I just went ahead and talked about my life and told you the story of my life, you know. And for today's rambling on, since last week I told you guys, my 26 years of my life, basically, 23, 24. The last two have been mostly about my kids. Last two or three, since my son is 4, he's going to be 5. And my daughter is 2, just turned 2 in December. So she's going to be 3 at the end of this year. And so, since I told you the 26 years of my life in about 20 minutes or so, I want to talk today about time. And, time is, 1 second at a time, right? You take 1 step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, however you want to look at it. But I want to talk about in the context of the Gateway experience, and specifically the report, the Monroe Institute's report on time. Because as we go through our lives, time passes one way or the other. I don't know if you've heard that before, but here we go on the rambling. Time just it just passes. Whether you're doing something you want to do or you're doing something you don't want to do, it's gonna pass one way or the other. But there's another perspective to that. When I was in college, I realized, and I think because I played so much Minecraft as well, and I don't know, but if you've ever played Minecraft, if you look at the coordinates, on the 3D world of the Minecraft world, it's got the X, Y, and Z axis. And so I was taking physics in college, and I was realizing this is before. I mean, I had played Minecraft, when I was 14 and everything, and throughout my life, like so much. I just love the game. It's a good creative outlet, kind of like this, talking and everything. And what I want to do is kind of correlate those two topics of the Minecraft world as we perceive it, and as a human being living life outside of the Minecraft world. The Minecraft days are shorter than our real life days, and so it almost feels like, I know that's how it felt like to me as a kid, that I was like speeding up my life almost by playing Minecraft. And when you're in that world, if you want to find out where you are, kind of like your position, you look at the XYZ coordinates. And so those coordinates, when I was in college, I realized there's a fourth coordinate, which is the coordinate of time, because they would give us these graphs, right? If you get a 2D graph, you have the X and the Y axis. I don't know if you know anything about math, but if you don't, then I don't know. I think it's not too hard to understand. If you're going down a road, it's like you're going backwards and forwards, then that's actually the Z axis. So that's the third axis. So the X and the Y axis, the X being the left and right, and the Y axis being the up and down. I think I got that right. And then the Z axis being backwards and forwards. So that's because we live in a 3D plane, 3D world. But the fourth dimension that I realized when I was in college is the dimension of time, right? So let's pretend, if you want to visualize here, if you want to understand this, if you don't, it is what it is, whatever. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because I like the idea of it. And it's something that I realized. And I don't know, I think it's a good insight. And it's also something that they talk about in the Gateway experience. And if you visualize a circle, right, on a 2D plane, it's a circle, right? If it's a one-dimensional plane, it would just be a dot because it wouldn't really expand to a circle. It would just be a little period on a line. But if you want to connect the dots and add another line, right? Maybe look at it from a different perspective, another dimension. Especially since nowadays the news and everything, people are talking about craziness. There's an airplane flying by with UFOs and all this interdimensional stuff. So anyway, the two dimensions would be the x and the y axis, and then the third dimension would be the z. So now we've got a sphere, right? In our world, people think that, or who knows what it is. The Earth is a globe, or people think it's flat or whatever. That would be like a two-dimensional plane. But if we want to think about it in a different dimension, we've got a sphere, a three-dimensional plane. We've got a sphere, right? So it's no longer just a circle; it's a sphere. Now that we have this sphere, imagine if this sphere was to be at 1 second in time, it's one size, and then at another second in time, it's a slightly bigger size, right? So think about it like that. It's like, getting bigger as the time goes on. So now we've added a fourth dimension, and that's the dimension of time. Well, what if there was a being or something like that that was able to exist in the fifth dimension? So now we've got to think about the sphere being small and big all at once, right? So, or like human beings, how we start out as little, we're all little. And then as we go, we start out as babies. We know, we learn to crawl, we learn to walk, we learn to run, Eventually we make airplanes and we start flying around and everything. And I really find that really interesting. I would love to be able to. I mean, I'm starting to get to this first stage separation tape. I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to get to that point where I can feel my being outside of my body. I can't really fly around yet. It's kind of scary, being like just leaving your body behind and. Just like going to different places and being there, at least your consciousness and everything else. But yeah, so a being that can see the sphere being small and large all at the same time, or can see all of the different iterations of growth, or in the case of a human life, the beginning and the end of a human life, birth to death, and all of the different days that make up the different days, weeks, and months, and years that make up our lives. I think that's pretty interesting stuff, personally. It's kind of mind-blowing to an extent, but it's not completely impossible to comprehend, And so, if there is a being that can do that, that's pretty interesting, I think. Can we communicate with those beings? And maybe that's what I've been listening to Bob Monroe's book. I've listened to it so many times now, Journeys Out of the Body. And I don't know how many times exactly I've listened to it, but I'm listening to it again. And he talks about these intelligent species in this locale too. And he talks about these things like precognition and, these beings basically that he was able to encounter that do have that ability to see the future and the past and all this other stuff. But this is all to say that when we look at time, time is, the theory of relativity and all that. When we look at it, when we are little, as little kids, things seem like time seems like such a big concept, like 1 minute. I remember when I was little, I would look at the clock and I would just see like 1 minute pass by, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, how much time, like it took so long for that 1 minute to pass by, right? And then we all know the phrase, when you're having fun, time flies, right? So it's like when we get older, as we get older, and now that I'm 26, I'm looking at time and it's like, 1 year just goes by kind of quick. It's like when I was little, it would take, I felt like a week, for me to wait a week. It would be almost excruciating for me to wait a month, was like incomprehensible. And now one of my most popular videos on YouTube is the 1 month patterning tape, right? And I understand why people like it, because a 1 month seems like, especially with the ebb and flow of the moon and the tides and all this other stuff, it seems like we're almost different people 1 month later, but we're not necessarily. And those beings, or that truth, that which is unchanging, right? So over time, even if a month passes, even if 2 months pass, even if 3 months pass, or however long time passes, a year, which is the next tape that I haven't really practiced yet. I got to the 5 questions, and then I really wanted to take a step back. I haven't gotten to the 1 year patterning tape, but that's coming up soon in time. And yeah, the truth is that which is unchangeable, right? It's immutable, right? It never changes. So even throughout the eons, not just 1 year or 10 years or or 100 years or 1,000 years, a millennium or however long it is, it stays the same. It is unchanging. So that in and of itself is something that is outside of the dimension of time. That being right there, the truth. So that's how we can align ourselves. When we align ourselves with the truth, we become much more than we are as the changeable beings that we are. Right? So I think that's interesting. I think it's powerful stuff, the way we can look at it that way, and we can align ourselves with that, and we can manifest, right? So that's what allows us to close our eyes, and brick by brick, we can build a house in our dreams, and then we can go out and really focus on a plot of land, and eventually purchase that plot of land, and eventually lay those bricks that we've laid in our mind first in the manifestation of the world that we live in, right? So that's my little 2 cents on time. And in the interest of time, I don't want to make this video too long for anybody. I think there's more that I can say, but I think I've said enough, So if you like this video, let me know if you guys like these videos. You can like the video, or you can, leave a comment, stuff like that. And before I close this out here, I want to give you guys an update to my life, because I know I talked about the past, but what have I been doing, not just this past week like I posted 2 videos ago, but this past week, because I did talk about how we are programmable as human beings, which is not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's just, it is what it is. It's like the computer model of the world. Like computers, we are not computers. We are so much more, because we are sentient. But that whole concept of nothing in, nothing out, garbage in, garbage out, or in the case of what you and I, we all want to do, you are what you eat. We want to eat or consume good food, not just for our bodies, but also for our minds and everything else, so that we can have a good output and go out and experience in the world and really be what we would like to be, right? So we can actually build that house that we want to build. And so with all that being said, I just want to share with you guys, because I would look at other people that I don't look at anymore on YouTube. I want to tell you guys who I am looking at now, who I'm looking up to, right? So I like this whole concept of like, this is only the beginning, and somebody that helped share that with me is this lady who does a lot of yoga. I'm sure you've heard of her. Her name is Adrian, right? So Yoga with Adrian. I've been practicing that with my wife, and she's really cool. And I like that whole concept of the beginner's mindset. We're all just kind of starting out. And what else? I've been reading a lot of books, like I mentioned. So Bob Monroe's book, And then I've been watching Star Wars, right? So I'm going to, at the beginning of this video, uh, I probably already did it. So you saw the intro, right? And I like that. I think it's kind of it's a cool. I'm not like super into it. I've been reading up more on like the lore behind it, and not just like the first three movies or the second three movies, or even the newer ones that came out before after that. But what happened before and after that, right? So it's like a bigger perspective. And not only am I watching Star Wars, but I ran into this guy who was talking about, these interdimensional beings of light and all this other stuff that Bob Monroe also talked about, who went to the Monroe Institute, and his name is Chris Bledsoe, right? So I think he's a cool guy, and he inspired me to go out and look at the stars at night. So talk about input. That's like the best input that you can get, is going out and just looking up at the heavens. And I I'm learning about the constellation of Orion, right? So those things have been up there for a long time, right? So um for pretty much all the time. All right. So I think they've got a lot to share, even if we can't understand their vibrations the way we do when it reaches our ears. There's other things. So I recommend that to you guys, to go out and just look at the stars. Uh, I've heard that before, and I never really took action on it. But this guy really inspired me. And I would also look at, Dr. Stephen Greer and all this other stuff. And I did practice some of that CE5 stuff. But I never really, the group that I was in, it just kind of fell apart for one reason or another. So I like this kind of solo journey of just going out there, and maybe we can share it. You and me, we can share it together. If you go out and look at the stars and I go out and look at the stars, maybe I'll make some videos of that later on. And, it's kind of cool. So I think that's pretty much it. But yeah, let me know what's going on. Peace.